seconds, and then something he blessing a sacrifice takes damage. Suddenly the paladin pops out a sheep again. This and that. It's just a really bad time.
Bot Rix has correctly joined the channel.
Basically. But the vast majority of the time, they are in PG, PvP. They are just half the time they're fighting, they're missing some critical CD that would have otherwise made a fight a bit easier for them. And instead, they just kind of get hurt because of it. So, I would say that. Together pretty damn quickly. Hunters are by far the dominant that's why I brought up paladins, because like if I'm in Warsaw and there's a mage next to me and there's two hunters on the other side, somewhere between ice block and bomb. Ice block CCing the crap out of things. That's probably where mages and battlegrounds absolutely dominate.
And in BGs, and in pure theory, this is true. But like I said, 80% of paladins suck. And if mages are not catching any kind of paladin support specifically, they tend to have a bad time in BGs. Mostly the reason for this is because elemental shamans and other ranged casters can kind of just clap your cheeks together pretty damn quickly. Hunters are by far the dominant predator against you in battlegrounds. That's one of the reasons why I brought up the paladins, because like if I'm in Warsong Gulch and there's a mage next to me and there's two hunters on the other side, somewhere between Ice Block and Bop are just about Ice Block, Bop, and heals are really the only tools we have to deal with this, right? But if you're on the Horde side, Shaman doesn't even have Bop for you. And Shamans usually don't heal either. So, like, good luck. Yeah. But they're just mediocre. But by far, again, they're at their best when they're literally just CCing the crap out of things. That's probably where mages and battlegrounds absolutely dominate. It's when literally a mage. This is your life in like Warsong Gulch, right? It's like blink into the enemy team, Frost Nova, 5 people in place, so there's like 5 snare issues the opposing alliance or horde team has to deal with, and then like ice block so you don't die or die like a man, or pray to God that the paladin has bopped you. So you can get beat, purged, and then die like a man, like 3 seconds later. Yeah. Yep. Just a weird class in Battlegrounds. In World PvP, they are really, really good, but only against bad players. I know that sounds weird, but hear me out on this. A lot of matchups where mages win in like duels, for example. Mages are S tier in duels. They're one of the Holy Trinity. We'll talk about the Holy Trinity in a second. In World PvP, just like in duels, mages really kind of need to be able to sheep things in order to kill them, right? And in World PvP, it's incredibly easy for somebody to realize that if they just piss off this mob next to them and continue doing damage to it like every 12 or 16 seconds or something like that, that it's almost impossible for the mage to maintain a sheep on you. Which is why if I have to fight a mage in a duel, I'll as a paladin, I'll get crushed. But if I'm fighting a mage in open world PvP, they tend to not stand a snowball's chance in hell. And the reason for that is because I'm just going to find the nearest mob, smack it with my weapon, and then use like rank 1 consecrations or continue to, you know, piss it off in some way, shape, or form. Yeah, it's actually by standing still that you continue to piss it off as well, which I find funny. But you can just keep these world mobs on you and literally use them to not let the mage be able to sheep you. That's not a tactic that's usually used very often, so it's not that big of a deal. You'll struggle against multiple opponents, even though you have sheep, which is kind of interesting. What else is there to say there? They're still really, 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 really good in World PvP, but in my assessment, it's just because people are stupid, and they're like, I'm going to run at the mage, and I'm not going to aggro this bear next to me so he doesn't turn me into a sheep. Yeah, okay, cool. The other problem with World PvP is, like, there's a lot of terrain issues that mages kind of have to deal with. So a lot of times when you die as a mage, you'll, like, you know, blink into a wall or so, or there's just, like, literally a mountain in your way, and you're like, well, I can't kite this guy anymore, so I guess I lose. GG's. Stuff like that. Alright, gearing for mages, very, very easy. All their sets are DPS sets. Some weird things I know about mages is that they gain no hit points in their gearing from tier 2 onwards. So when it comes to mage PvP gearing, okay, I've talked to mages about this. Their tier 2 set is amazing, and then everything else is about on par with their tier 2. Which is kind of weird, right? Except for tier 1. So tier 2 is better than tier 1, and then tier 2 is kind of on par with the rank gear, which is on par with tier 2.5, which is on par even with max gear. It's just because the 8 set bonus on the tier 2 is so amazing. You'll have to go look elsewhere to figure out exactly what gear mages are wearing and specs are using and why, which brings us, I suppose, to specs. There is Palm Pyro, which was absolutely devastating people when I quit Season of Discovery. Zaryu beat my dick off with it in duels, which was awesome. There is just your classic Frost, where you go all the way down the Frost tree and you pick up your damn shield. That shield for mages is absolutely critical because they have really no way to heal themselves. Really, really good mages, which you rarely see, will use their wards. So like Fire Ward and Frost Ward and just their elemental wards in general. There's a lot of fire damage that gets thrown around by just about every class in the game. So like, you know, grenades are doing like 400 fire damage, and Goblin Mortars are doing like, you know, 400 fire damage. So even when you're fighting a rogue, just putting up a fire ward is actually really, really good if you have the mana to do it. You can also kind of see certain things coming. So, for example, I've seen top-tier mages where they're Palm Pyroing me, and then I basically PvP Trinket and activate, like, Frost Reflector right before the cast gets off. There's plenty of time there to see your own spells coming back at you and to activate a ward and to have the ward save the day, if that makes any sense. Getting hit by a Hand of Rag, Fire Ward is amazing. Use your damn wards is what I'm trying to say. What else is there about specs? Fire spec is amazing. Frost spec is amazing. And then the last spec is, Palm Pyro. Nobody uses combustion. That is one thing I do know about mages. Combustion is useless. Get something else. There's something else I want to say about mages. Right, the Holy Trinity. Okay, let's get out some purple for the Holy Trinity. The Holy Trinity... Actually, let's get this light blue. The Holy Trinity in Classic World of Warcraft is Paladin and Mage, and then lastly is Warlock. This is for duels, right? Now we're talking about mages and duels. Let me take a drink really fast. Yeah. Alright, so I refer to this as the Holy Trinity, and it has caught on over the years. So, the Holy Trinity in dueling, in top-tier dueling, is mages, paladins, and warlocks. The reason for this is because mages beat paladins, warlocks beat mages, and paladins beat warlocks. Okay? There's a reason why whenever you see a horde only dueling tournament, warlocks always win. Like, virtually almost always win. And if warlocks are not winning the horde-only dueling tournament, it's just because you've got, like, it's not Zico, it's not Zaryu, I forget who the hell it is, Venruki, right? Venruki? I think it's Venruki. You'll have, like, some super Giga Chad mage. I think a mage beat a warlock, like, one time in, like, a horde-only dueling tournament, and I think it was Venruki specifically, but god damn was it a close fight, and the RNG could have gone either way on that one. The vast majority of the time, warlocks will beat the crap out of mages. Mages will literally beat the shit out of everything, and then they just get absolutely murked by warlocks. It's not super one-sided, but it's one-sided enough that it's like, damn, right? Okay, cool. Conversely, good paladin players, it doesn't even take that good of a paladin player to beat the shit out of warlocks. Warlocks die like little girls to a paladin that is even remotely decent at PvP. The main reason for this is because warlocks need to be able to reset fights on paladins to get their mana back in order to kill, like, top-tier paladins. And us paladins have basically discovered that if we just fight them one-handed and use, like, skeleton summoning books, plural, the skeleton summoning book that you can get from Onyxia and the skeleton summoning book that you can get from the final boss in Strat Live, they do not share. They don't share a CD, but you can't use both of them at the same time, but you can use them back to back. So you can summon, like, this 5,800 HP skeleton that does like 100 DPS to chase the warlock around and keep him in combat. You can even put, like, sacrifice on him, or you can put like freedom on him, or you can heal the skeleton, and it'll keep the warlock in combat while you're feared as the paladin. And when that skeleton timer runs out of, like, a minute, you can just summon, like, another skeleton on them. It's AIDS, and the warlocks tend to just kind of crumple and die horribly. There's other builds that do even more terrible things to warlocks, like heavy shadow resistance builds. But the skeleton playstyle is just more consistent, because I could be, like, in any gear. I could be, like, in my farming gear and be like, oh shit, am I about to fight a fucking warlock? Okay, cool. Let me put on my skelly book, right? I don't need to be like, let me get out my, like, specific shadow resist gear to fight this warlock. You also have a much higher win rate against warlocks if you gear far more DPS and less heavy on the shadow resist, and you just rely on skeleton pets and then trinkets like mithril insignia and blah 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 blah. So paladins beat the crap out of warlocks, warlocks beat the crap out of mages, mages beat the crap out of paladins. Just is what it is. And that's why it is the Holy Trinity. So anyways, like I was saying, if it's a horde tournament, warlock's going to win. If it's an alliance tournament, it's either going to be a paladin or a mage. Like, virtually without exception, it's a paladin or a mage that wins an alliance PvP tournament. Every once in a while, you get a warlock up there, to be sure. It depends on how the brackets look. Like, the mages might have killed all the paladins, and then there's, like, a warlock mage left, and we already know what the hell that looks like. Or vice versa, yada, yada, yada. But yeah, they are one of the Holy Trinity as far as duels go. They have some hard matchups, like mages really love fighting rogues because it's a very interesting and dynamic fight for mages. Mages like and love fighting shadow priests or just priests in general, just because it's a very interesting and dynamic fight. They have a lot of very interesting and dynamic fights. Shamans can come kind of close to beating mages, but not really. It's kind of sad to watch because it always looks like a very near-run thing, but the mages are... it's just the fact that mages can just reset until RNG goes their way. Like, that's basically the mage game plan, right?
Yes.
And that's why it doesn't really work against warlocks, because they can just put dots on you, and then it's like, okay, well, you can't reset forever now. Let's see, you better pray to God that you get good RNG within, like, the first 3 bursts, or I win, haha. Basically how that works. Yeah, and they absolutely crush warriors, so, like, what are we even talking about there? So, yeah, they are one of the Holy Trinity of the PvPers. They are absolutely insane in dueling. So they're really good in world PvP just because no one uses the wildlife against them. They are like top tier, S tier, S plus, whatever the fuck you want to call it, in duels. Their gearing is dirt simple and very easy to get, and they have multiple specs that they get to play. And in BGs, they are a hell of a lot of fun, like crowd controllers. You can pull off some crazy stuff in BGs. There's a bit of a skill gap there. They're not terrible. It's just half of your fights you're not going to have ice block. Like that it just is what it is. And then every once in a while, you're going to be fighting a warrior who has what am I thinking about? Give me a sec here. Oh yeah, you'll be fighting like a free action potioning warrior that has like a dot on him. Yeah, good without your ice blocks. Good fucking luck. Like GG's levels of good fucking luck. It's like, oh, I need to sheep this guy before he kills me. Oh shit, my sheep gets broken. Uh-oh. Or, it's getting cleansed off the warrior. He's got like paladin support. I have literally gone like Pally warrior against 3 mages in Warsong Gulch before. And yeah, the mages kill me, but by the time I resurrected and got back out there, the warrior had killed all 3 mages. Why is this? Well, it's because freedom lasts a hell of a long fucking time. Literally, that's what the hell happened. The sheep was on DR, and he still has freedom on, and so he's just running around like... And then when freedom wore off, I think he still had a free action potion. It was pretty stupid. Yeah, no. Absolutely terrifying. Yeah, that's all I got to say about mages. Cool. Moving on. This video is going to be long as hell, because Palatime has things to say. Oh boy. Paladin. I make videos on Paladin. My suggestion would be to go watch those. Because I don't want this video to be too long. BGs, it depends on what you're doing, but they're somewhere between good and suck balls. So, Warsong Gulch is a lot of fun. Arathi Basin is a lot of fun as a paladin. Alterac Valley sucks ass. And that's basically all there is to it. And it really doesn't matter if you're Ret, doesn't matter if you're a Ret Reckoning, doesn't matter if you're Holy Reckoning or even a Deep Holy. That's just the way it goes. Warsong Gulch is amazing. Arathi Basin is really, really good as well. Lots of nice small fights. Basically, Paladins really enjoy like lots of nice small fights. And then AV is literally like a war that is incredibly unfavorable to melee classes. Alterac Valley is where ranged classes basically get to shine, and Paladin is not a ranged class, so it's like you heal till you're and then you charge off into the enemy and die, and res with a full mana bar, rinse, repeat. Riveting. But if you can find places to get yourself into like nice small fights in Alterac Valley. It can be a lot of fun. Yeah. BGs, like, I don't know what to really tell you. I have an entire video on how to heal in BGs. There's a lot of little tips and tricks in there. So, for example, if you're healing in a battleground, a lot of what you do as a paladin is you range tank as a paladin, basically. And what I mean by this is that at 40 yards distance, because that's how far your heals can heal out to. I don't advise being 40 yards, but let's just assume you're with a coordinated partner, like a warrior or even a team. There's only so many CCs that can reach out and touch you at 40 yards. Even at 30 yards, there's only so many CCs that can reach out and touch you. Keep in mind, Warlock Fear is a hard cast spell that has a 20-yard range. Good luck. Succubi, their spell is hard cast, but it's like a 30-yard range and almost instant cast, as far as I can tell. But Succubi have like 2,000 HP and no armor. So the moment, like literally, if I have Succubi problems in Battlegrounds, I literally just tell everybody in Battleground chat to kill the damn Succubi if you want the Paladins healing you. Because that's like the one thing that can consistently reach out 30 yards and tell the Paladin's healing to go fuck itself. Curse of Tongues is also kind of in that category, but a lot of Warlocks don't put Curse of Tongues on you, which is really weird. What else is there to say about that? If you do get Cursed of Tongues, you just need like a priest or something to get it off of you. But yeah, that's kind of one of those things where it's like, oh shit, it's a Warlock. I think I'll heal at 40 yards because I don't want to be Cursed of Tongues. I don't want to be Succubied on. But as soon as the warriors figure out that the Succubi are basically a free rage bar, like literally they charge into the Succubi, they like hit it once or twice with auto attacks. The thing has 2,000 HP and no armor. Their rage bar just shoots up into oblivion. The Succubi dies horribly, and then the Warlock it's standing next to goes, oh, fuck. Yeah, good stuff. Now you might be thinking, okay, what about rogues decloaking off your starboard bow at 30 yards? What about warriors charging into you at 30 yards? Okay, cool. That's what bop is for. A lot of people will be like, bopping offensively or bopping to save the mage or bopping this or bopping that. All that stuff will get purged pretty quickly. But literally healing at like 30-yard range and watching a warrior intercept on top of you to stop your healing, and then you just bop in his fucking face and laugh at him while you continue to heal, is a greater use of bop than just about anything else you can do with it. The reason for this is because that warrior has literally taken his DPS out of the fight to do nothing more than to get your bop on cooldown. Yeah, it's hilarious. And then if you're like a dwarf, rogues can't do anything to you either. So a rogue will decloak on you. You literally just bop and pop your racial and start healing, and at that point they can't even blind you. So if you're 30 yards away from the combat, the rogue also has taken his DPS out of the combat to do nothing more than to get your bop on cooldown. I play Holy Reckoning, so usually I'll entertain the rogue for just as long as it takes for me to get a full wreck bomb and then delete him out of existence. But it really depends on how badly I need to heal, kind of a thing. And so on and so forth it goes. So, for example, you save PvP trinket for certain things and yada yada yada. PGs are pretty interesting. If you are not a healing paladin, you need to cleanse the world. All right. I see a lot of rep paladins and BGs. They're running around doing damage, doing this and doing that, and they're not cleansing at all. You can auto attack and cleanse at the same time, bro. Auto attack this guy, cleanse that guy over there, cleanse this, spam cleanse on that guy, spam cleansing yourself, cleanse the fucking world. Like what the hell? What the hell are we doing here? Shamans are purging the world. You need to cleanse the world. It just is what it is. Alright, world PvP. Paladins are top tier, if not S tier in world PvP. The reason for this is that Probably the best world PvPer in the entire game is rogues, hands down. And paladins are one of the few classes that rogues cannot engage with in the open world. Even in dueling tournaments, paladins, they have something stupid like an 85, 87% win rate against rogues, especially if it's a reckoning paladin. So they don't even mess you. Like I said before, when I play my dwarf paladin, I never see rogues. I literally never see rogues in world PvP. When I play a human, I see them all the time. They try their luck. They'll like open up on the good ones, open up on you and try to judge if you're any good. Like what they'll do is they'll open up on you until they crit you like 2 times, and then they'll stop opening up on you, and they want to see what you do with those 2 crit charges. Are you a reckoning paladin? Are you going to throw them into him? And if you turn around and you put like half a wreck bomb into the rogue, they're going to know that you're a moron, and they might actually be able to kill this paladin. But if you turn around and don't do anything and you just stare at them, they have no idea if you're a god or if you are like they don't even know if you're a reckoning paladin at that point. They don't know if you're death or if you're like a holy paladin pretending to be a reckoning paladin. As a general rule, it depends on if you're like have a 2-handed weapon or not. So if you're a holy paladin out in the open world on like a PvP server, highly suggested that you wear a 2-handed weapon for no other reason than the damn rogues might think you're a reckoning paladin. Like, unironically. You can scare them off that way, and no, I'm not joking about that. Yeah, so that's why one of the reasons why they're top tier in world PvP. The other reason is just reckoning. You can pre-charge reckoning on mobs, and it's like you're running around with a shotgun. Like, unironically, you're just doing drive-by shootings at people. I don't know how to describe you, man. You're like a Romulan warbird that can't cloak. Like, everybody sees you coming. You're slow as fuck. But if you're mounted, you're not that slow anymore. And you literally just... If they made a machinima of like Ret Paladins of World PvP in Classic World of Warcraft, it would literally be like a paladin, like having jumped up in the air, like soaring through the air, like 10 feet off the ground, just to fall on top of somebody with a Hodge stun and a wreck bomb and delete them out of existence. That's Paladin World PvP. The reason for this is because they go charge a wreck bomb and then they mount up. And right before they get to their target, they like jump into the air and dismount in the air. That way they can Hodge stun you while in the air. They're just like flying through the air like they're Michael Jordan doing a slam dunk or some shit. And then they just hit you with a wreck bomb and delete your ass out of existence. Yeah, world PvP paladins are absolute monsters. It's pretty stupid and pretty funny, I'm not gonna lie. Duels, like I said, they are one of the Holy Trinity. When you're really, 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 really good as a paladin, and it doesn't take a lot of skill to be really good, you just have to wear the right damn gear and like have some semblance of being able to push macros, which is a ability I do not have macro-wise. Got everything else, just can't push buttons. Like, it is what it is. There's almost no matchup in the game that you can't beat. And that includes mage. You'll have like a 50-50 win rate against mages, and then you'll have like an 80 plus win rate against just about every other class in the game. That is why they are one of the Holy Trinity in duels. Alright, specs. We'll talk about gearing in a second. Specs, oh boy, there's plenty of paladin specs. In fact, it's probably more viable paladin specs than any other class in the entire game by far. So you have Deep Holy, you have Holy Reckoning, you have Ret Reckoning, and then you have Deep Ret, and then you have something that I'm going to be playing / testing this go around, which is Heal Reckoning, and then the last spec worth mentioning is something called Shock Eye is worth mentioning, and the other one that's worth mentioning is, I think it's called Command Shock or Shock Command. So anyway, there's tons of specs. I've made videos on them before. The two ones that are the most common are either Holy Reckoning or Ret Reckoning, and Deep Ret is also really, really good. But you gotta, Deep Ret is like, Deep Red is the one Paladin build where you actually have to be good with Paladin. Let me put it that way. Yeah. What else did I say? Gearing. Paladin gearing is very interesting. I made an entire video on this. Go watch the Paladin gearing in like 2023. It'll be very illuminating. As it generally speaking, there's only two Paladin builds as far as Paladin gear is concerned. There is a fire resist build that centers around having Rag. Okay, if you have Hand of Rag. And then there are spell power builds that aren't very good in PvP, unless you're specifically Holy Shock Eye, I think. Specifically Holy Shock Eye. Or Command Shock might be decent with that. But as a general rule, they just wear all stats gear. Let me pause the video really fast here and I'll show you what I mean. Yeah. Okay, I got it loaded up. Alright, so if I go here, I go Tools, I go Gear Planner, I go Paladin, I go Dwarf, right? This is me just dicking around with modern day Paladin gearing on like a Dwarf Paladin with the Grand Marshal Sunderer. This is Nax level gearing only because it has a Fortitude of the Scourge on the shoulders. Every other bit here is basically AQ or lower. It's all stats gear on your Paladin until the end of time. By all stats gear, I'm talking like it's not uncommon for Paladins these days to wear like 4-piece Avengers. We don't even care about the 5-step bonus. 5-step bonus is 71, magic. Why do we not care about that? We just don't. All we really care about the Avengers crown here is that she's got strength, agility, stamina, intellect, spirit, and then she's got spell power and critical strike. She's got everything. She's got all the stats, aka all stat gear. Right, Grandmaster's Spauldrons, strength, stamina, intellect, restores mana, critical strike, damage, and healing. All the stats. That's all we give a shit about is all the stats. And when you put on all stats gear on a Paladin, you end up with shit like, this is a heal reckoning. So we got 9 points in the Holy Tree. We got our 25 points into the Protection Tree. But you run around with 3 out of 3 improved concentration aura, and with the 4 points of spiritual focus, you have 100% pushback immunity on top of the 15% chance to resist interrupts, which is awesome, and I think to be silenced as well, or is that TBC? Also got to talk about TBC, derp. But you also have command to twist into your bombs, and then eye for an eye. So it's literally just like a Reckoning Paladin that has the option to heal itself in combat, which synergizes extremely well with the all stats gear. But this is like the brand new spec of my own creation that needs to be tested this go around in Classic World of Warcraft. But yeah, 5,700 HP. It can go up to almost 6,000 HP. The mana bar is insane. A 21% melee crit. Like, god damn. You don't want to go anywhere fucking near this thing. It will eat your jujubes. What else is there to say about this? There's one more thing to say, but I can't remember. Oh, full tier 3. We're full tier 3 with the tier 3 ring and then thick obsidian breastplate with like a Might of Minithil is also top tier for a lot of Paladin specs, which is really funny. Interestingly enough, tier 1 is an early game version of tier 3, and if you're running around with like tier 1 and like a Grand Marshal's Claymore, or like a tier 1 and a Lava Dredger, or just a tier 1 and a nice slow, a decent two-handed weapon in general, it's actually really good, like alarmingly good. Just because basically Paladins do 80% of their DPS butt naked with a two-handed weapon, and that's why they're so good in like tier 3, for example, because they're like, well, I do 80% of my damage, and you can't kill me, so GG's. Yeah. Are they easy to gear? Yeah, they're pretty easy to gear. Kind of. A lot of their gear is like a weird mix match of like Avengers and Marshals and so on. So, gearing a Paladin in Classic World of Warcraft, you want to get rank 12 kind of at a minimum. Don't have to, but you really want to. And then rank 3 is even better than that. And since this fresh server, whatever we're calling it these days, relaunch is going to be so accelerated, You are highly incentivized to get your rank 13 just so you can get access to the weapons and the shields. I was going to go with the Grand Marshal Sunderer here just because it looks absolutely effing hilarious when you're fully geared out with this Paladin, especially if I don't have the damn helmet on. The reason for this, it even goes well with the beard. The reason for this is because a properly geared Paladin in Classic World of Warcraft looks like he's in dungeon gear. Like, I could have a Grand Marshal's Claymore or a Grand Marshal's Demolisher or something here, but that's an iconic weapon that everybody recognizes. Who the fuck is going to see this weapon coming? This looks like some dungeon piece of shit. These shoulders are from Nax. When you see a Paladin in these shoulders, you need to piss yourself, because that's a Paladin that knows what the hell they're doing. Especially when they got golden pants and golden arm pieces. Just be afraid. You're like, oh shit, that's all stat gear. I'm about to die. Yeah, if you see a Paladin full tier 2, laugh at him. That might be good for Shock Eye and Command. But yeah, so that's just that. Let's leave that there. Let's delete that, and we'll go back over here. Cool. Right, so that's all I gotta say about Paladin. As you know, I make a lot of videos. Part of the Holy Trinity, yada yada yada. Priest. Priest is one of those classes that in the past, the only thing holding her back, the only reason she was bad in PvP, is because she struggled to get gear. Priest, none of their tier sets are PvP viable sets. They're all healing sets. If you want to heal in PvP, then that is an amazing set for you. But if you want to do any damage with her whatsoever in PvE, in PvP, you either have to A, wait until AQ40 comes out, because AQ40 has an absolute shit ton of off-piece gear. So, like, not set gear, just off-piece gear, random bits of crap that nobody else wants, because all the other spellcasters want their damn tier sets. Except for maybe, I don't even know about Shaman. Oh yeah, all the other casters just want their tier sets. So you can gear up pretty well offensively with just the random crap that drops in AQ40 that nobody wants. But by far the best way to gear your Shadow Priest or your Smite Priest, for example, is in rank 13 gear. It's basically rank 13 gear to go home. And since they made it so much easier to get rank 13 gear, highly suggested you get your damn rank 13 gear. Don't know if you have to go rank 14. I don't think you have to, but rank 13 with Priest is absolutely necessary. I think the set bonus also reduces the cooldown of your Psychic Scream, which is a really big deal. Damn. Take a drink of water. What else is there to say here? BGs, they're absolutely amazing. Like, they're just monsters. They can do it all. Highly desirable, could do everything. There's just no downside to them literally whatsoever. The only real downside is that they have mana issues that you need to keep an eye on. As a Shadow Priest, one trinket that can easily be your best friend is Major Recombobulator. The reason why Major Recombobulator is your best friend is because she does a bunch of things. She can remove like polymorph effects. She heals and restores mana. Okay, you follow me on this? But it also has like 100% spell power ratio behind it. So if you use your Major Recombobulator Ray on yourself as a fully geared like Priest, not only will you heal yourself for something stupid like 1,000 hit points, you'll also recover like 500 mana. And mana is kind of the one thing that throttles. It's the only thing that keeps this class in check. Shadow Priests are kind of a meme in Classic WoW because they kind of beat the crap out of everything. They're one of these weird classes. They're like Warlock in the sense that Paladin's kind of in that boat as well. Warlock, Paladin, and Priest are the three classes in the game that are highly immobile, but if you stand toe-to-toe with them, they'll usually beat the crap out of you in PvP. There's not a single class in the entire game that can go toe-to-toe with a Paladin and survive. Every battle tactic versus Paladin that's even remotely successful involves kiting the shit out of them because they're just too tanky and they do too much damage. They will beat the crap out of anything in toe-to-toe fights. Shadow Priest will beat the shit out of anything except a Paladin in a toe-to-toe fight. Warlocks will likewise beat the shit out of anything except a paladin in toe-to-toe fights. Paladins are the kings of sustained fighting in classic World of Warcraft. When warlocks and shadow priests go at it, it's only slightly the only reason the warlock wins against a shadow priest is because shadow priests tend to run out of mana before they can actually kill the fucking warlock. Meanwhile, the warlocks can't technically run out of mana, right? Yeah, it's a weird fight. I'll just put it that way. Yeah, BG's absolutely amazing. World PvP, they're actually incredible. Just because, like I was saying, they're like this walking giga tank, where it's like anything within 30 yards of them is going to get melted, like whether they like it or not. I think hunters can kind of kick the crap out of them. But it's really, really hard for the hunter, and it takes like a million years. So there's usually like a bunch of terrain stuff that the priest is going to find safety at some point. They're just a little bit too hard to kill for a hunter, generally speaking. But if they have to run farther than, let's say, like, half a zone, yeah, the hunter will probably kill them. That's not always true, though, because if you get caught with like half a mana bar, again, your survivability is linked almost directly to your mana bar. So how likely you are to win a lot of fights is also linked directly to your mana bar in world PvP. So it's one of those situations where if you're jumping on the enemy, the odds of you winning are extraordinarily high because you're gonna be mounted and just jump on them so they can't get away from you. But if you're the one getting aggressed on by like a hunter at 36 yards, you're just gonna have to run for your life, kind of a deal, or get creative with it, right? Speed potions, nifty stopwatch, rocket boots, all that kind of stuff. You just got to get up close and personal. Just is what it is. But yeah, generally speaking, they're amazing. You don't have to worry about rogues. Rogues will almost never mess with the shadow priest in shadow form. It's kind of weird unless you get low mana. That is one of the things. If you're like, oh, I'm gonna drop to 30% mana, a rogue will eat your jujubes. And if you ever are running around outside of shadow form, rogues will definitely take that fight and kick the crap out of you. Duels. They are absolutely insane in duels. They're just not quite in the Holy Trinity. They are just outside of the Holy Trinity. They are the one class, in my opinion, that is quote-unquote just outside the Holy Trinity. Shadow Priest specifically beats the crap out of just about everything. I'm trying to think here. It even has a decent matchup versus mages. The problem is it gets its butt kicked by warlocks, and it gets its butt kicked by paladins. And having a decent matchup against a mage is not enough to make up for the fact that 2 out of the 3 Holy Trinity are having their way with you like a schoolgirl. Really bad stuff. But yeah, super, super, super powerful in duels. Keep in mind, it takes a rather experienced paladin to actually beat you. It literally takes a paladin that's watched my guide on how to beat priests in order to beat a priest in PvP. And like I said, 80% of paladins suck, so you will actually beat 80% of priests, paladins in duels. Just keep that in mind. So very quickly, you'll have like winning matchups against mages, you'll have winning matchups against paladins, and then it's only warlocks that are really going to actually give you any kind of trouble. But that's just because most mages aren't really good enough to take you on, most paladins aren't good enough to take you on, and warlocks can borderline face roll over their keyboard and give you a run for your money. Specs. There is Shadow Priest, and there is Smite spec. Holy and Discipline. Well, the Smite Priest is a Discipline spec. Holy spec is not a thing in PvP whatsoever. It just isn't. You're either a Shadow Priest or you're a Discipline Priest. If you're Discipline, you're using Smiting or you're just healing. And if you're Shadow, of course, you're using Shadow spells. The Smite Priest... Smite Priest is one of the sleeper PvP specs in classic World of Warcraft. What holds her back is her gearing. She really struggles to find gear, like historically, right? Because you had to be rank 13 or your gear, or wait for AQ and get like random bits and bobs out of AQ and just basically lash together a PvP suit out of that. However, Smite Priests are absolutely fucking terrifying. They do way more fucking DPS than Shadow Priests. I'm not even joking. Smite does so much. Smite spam Priests do so much DPS that they will kill Paladins, Holy Paladins, even though the Holy Paladin is doing nothing but casting Holy Lights into themselves. They will out DPS healers while healers like are doing nothing but healing themselves. The DPS on Smite is absolutely insane. It's because it's got like a very short cast time on Smite, and it's got an extraordinarily high spell power ratio for a spell. Smite Priests are absolutely terrifying. I don't know why I don't see them in dueling tournaments too terribly often. I think it's because the lack of Shadow Form causes them to have a losing matchup versus Rogues. That would be my guess. Because when you watch Shadow Priest versus Rogue, the Shadow Priests barely survive the attentions of a Rogue with like 15% HP remaining. And I think without that, that's with Shadow Form, and I think without that, they just kind of fall over. So and of course, they still lose to the Holy Trinity. So it's like, you know, crap. But other than that, they are absolutely amazing. There's really not that much to say here on Priests. They're a very dirt simple class. Oh, that's another thing. The other thing to say about Priests is that you can be really bad at the game and still be a top tier PvPer when you play Priest. Like literally all you have to do is get the gear, and then it plays basically like a League of Legends character where you can just like, you know, smash your face into the keyboard, and pretty much you'll beat the vast majority of enemies that try to tangle with you. Like just end of story, right? That is one of the things that I really love about Priest, is that she's dirt simple, kind of the way a Paladin is dirt simple. Yeah. Alright, anyway, not much to say about Priest, sorry about that. I'm trying to think about gear or anything like that. TBC, my bad, I didn't talk about Paladins and TBC. Sheesh. Paladins and TBC are absolutely amazing. I even have dueling videos of Paladins and TBC. But we'll just have to make those videos when we get there. They are... how do I put this? Come TBC, there's going to be my guides for PvP and TVC, and then there's going to be everyone else's, and if you're not following mine, you're doing it wrong. But to like a large degree. But Paladins are absolutely insane in TVC, but they're not hard to build. You just need to know what the hell you're doing. Very complicated. Let's just leave it at that. I have like 50 videos on Paladin and TVC and me theory crafting with it. We'll just leave it there. Shadow Priests and TVC, I'm trying to remember. I think they're kind of the same in TVC, where they're terrifying. They do shit tons of damage. But one thing about TVC is that TBC bathes, and I mean bathes with an E, you in resistance gear, right? Resistance gear is literally falling out of the sky in TBC, like unironically falling out of the sky in TBC. So in classic World of Warcraft, you're going to run into enemies that have shadow resist, and if you're a Shadow Priest, you're going to hate your life. But it took a lot of work for that person to, you know, amass all that shadow resist gear and then carry it around in their bags and yada yada yada. In TBC, yeah, they can literally put on like 4 pieces of shadow resist gear, and you're going to want to pull your eyeballs out of your head. So that's kind of the one issue they have in TBC, is that resistance gear is just falling out of the sky and they do shadow damage. Eye of Moab. Damn, I don't have it right now. Eye of Moab. Eye of Moab is a trinket. It's an AQ 20 man trinket that Gives you spell power and reduces the enemy's resistances by 100 for like 30 seconds on like a 3-minute cooldown. Use that. Even in TBC, Eye of Moab is probably the way to go because of Shadow Resist being an issue. Alright, cool. Moving on. Pew. Rogue is by far the least class that I know about. However, as far as PvP goes, I'm relatively familiar with how overpowered she is. In BGs, rogues suck. The end. About the only BG that rogues actually have fun in and actually have meaning and purpose to their existence in is Arathi Basin. That is good news, however, in Classic World of Warcraft, because you'll be grinding in Arathi Basin like, you know, more than any place else. In Alterac Valley, about all they're good for is going behind the enemy lines and trying to defend and recap towers. But that's better on that's better on the Alliance side than the Horde side, or I should say more useful on the Alliance side than the Horde side, unless they fix it in Classic WoW. Because the Horde have a way for them to pull out Van without really pulling out the Marshals very much. And us Alliance players, we do this annoying thing as well, where we'll have like a Paladin or a Hunter, like, you know, usually it's a Paladin and a Hunter, like kite out all the Marshals and take them off into Narnia and then tank them for 1,000,000 years and then get absolutely murdered. But it just gives a raid group like so much time alone with Drek or Van that they're able to kill them. But it's hard. It's much harder to do with the AV War Masters, the Horde bodyguards to Drek, than it is for the Alliance. So you capping towers on the Alliance side doesn't really matter all that much compared to the Horde side. But you can have a lot of fun with it because you get to play like your little, like, you know, behind the lines assassin shenanigans, especially in scenarios that have degenerated in Alterac Valley. In AB, of course, you are a monster. You can cap flags, defend flags, sap people just running, trying to ride by on their mounts. It's really gross. In AB, my bad, in Warsong Gulch, you're like a flag room defender, and like that's it. You're actually really good as a rogue dealing with druids. I completely forgot about this. My bad. Maybe they're good in maybe they're a sleeper class in Warsong Gulch. You're one of the only classes that can actually chase down druids with long enough for their, like, you know, free action potion to wear off, and then you have enough stuns and enough DPS to actually give them the business, or to keep them pinned in place until reinforcements can jump on the flag carrier. You're one of the only classes that can actually do that. When really good druid flag carriers die, it's almost always because there was a rogue involved. That brings me back to paladins. I forgot about this. There's a weapon in the game called Mugahurt. You can buy off the auction house pretty cheap. It's a 1.7 speed weapon that has like a 5% chance on hit, 10% chance on hit if you're using Seal of Righteousness as a paladin, to slow the target for 10 seconds. That slow is a physical slow, so it can only be removed by like Bubble, Freedom, Bop, and Ice Block in the entire game. That is the only weapon in the entire game, the only slow in the entire game that you can put on a druid, and they cannot shapeshift out of whatsoever. So if you're not dual wielding Mugs of Hurt, I don't even know if you can dual wield Mugs of Hurt. Maybe they're like main hand only, but I don't think so. Yeah, dual wield Mugs of Hurt, get that slow on the druid, they'll start cursing bloody murder.
Like, Valkyrie wing?
Yeah, good stuff. What else is there to say about Rogue? Rogues have a much better time of it in Battlegrounds fighting for the Alliance than they do fighting for the Horde. Yes, they get Wind Fury when they fight for the Horde. But that is kind of nothing compared to freedom, bops and cleanses and all that good stuff that paladins bring. A lot of people talk about how Pally Warrior is like a Super Saiyan combo in classic World of Warcraft and beyond. Pally Rogue is also equally as powerful, if not more powerful, than Pally Warrior. Like, unironically, like Super Saiyan. Because the only thing that really keeps rogues in check in Battlegrounds is the fact that they can be snared and CC'd. They have a bit of a problem in Battlegrounds similar to mages, where their shit is always on cooldown. Like, it's always on cooldown. They're always missing something. They're another class, just like a mage, that if they don't have all their cooldowns, they kind of suck, right? They're just not that good. But you start pairing them with a paladin, the next thing you know, you don't need sprint to get out of this snare anymore. You just need it to catch somebody or to run away. But you don't really, but if you're using it to run away, you're not going to run away for long because the paladin's just going to heal you to full and you can turn around and get right back into the fight. And on top of that, they basically just do monstrous DPS. When I'm healing as a warrior in like Warsong Gulch, I basically try to find a Chad warrior or I try to find a Chad rogue. And if I can't find a Chad warrior or a Chad rogue, I try to find a Chad warlock. And if I can't find a Chad warlock, I'll find a Chad hunter or a Chad mage, right? I'm just going to cozy on up to something and do what I do best, which is, you know, keep them alive, mobile, and absolutely murking the crap out of things. But in my experience, rogues are even better than warriors for a duo with paladin. Pally Rogue, absolutely terrifying classic WoW. Pally Warrior, terrifying. Pally Warlock, terrifying. And even Pally Hunter is the stuff of nightmares. Yeah, really. So they have some good times in BGs, but unironically, the Alliance Rogues have a significantly better time of it just because they got Paladin support. Warlock support, Shaman support really doesn't compare by any stretch of the imagination. In World PvP, we already know, if there was a holy trinity of World PvP, Rogues would be at the top tier of it. They are cancerous ass in World PvP, especially if they're willing to use Thistle Tea. They can kill most enemies in a 1v1 fight in World PvP using Thistle Tea alone. There's only a handful of classes that can survive it, and a handful of specs in those classes. So, for example, they will kill a Warlock if it's not SL Warlock, specifically. They'll have a pretty good matchup against Paladin, unless it's specifically a Reckoning Paladin. And other than that, they kind of just kill everything else, like, to an alarming degree. But, you know, Whipperroot Tubers and healing potions and free action potions and all that stuff can give rogues a bit of a run for their money. Like, unironically, a bit of a run for their money. So, for example, if you have a shaman that's like, you know, just is willing to free action potion on a rogue and willing to, you know, Whipperroot Tuber, and oh my god, he's got a Discombobulator Ray or Arena Grandmaster Trinket, or even worse would be like a Title Charm. Usually these guys will like Goblin Mortar you and blow the crap out of you. Rogues in Classic World of Warcraft, their PvP Trinket does not remove stuns. Let me repeat that. Their PvP Trinket does not remove stuns. So this is how you die, is you get stunned and then you get bursted on, or you get stunned and the enemy runs away from you. And then when you're out of sprints, then you're just kind of up shit creek without a paddle. Yeah, so how shamans deal with them is really interesting. They'll be like, I Goblin Mortar stun you, and then Kamehameha. The rogue might survive that and like blind the shaman, or, you know, sap him or gouge him or whatever. They'll probably, you know, gouge, kill, cleansing totem, blind, and then, you know, reset. But the shaman still has like grenade to stun, and then Kamehameha, and then they have what's the other one? There's Goblin Mortar, Grenade, and Title Charm. Kamehameha, Kamehameha, Kamehameha. And then God help you if it's a Tauren, because they also have War Stomp, and then Kamehameha. And it's just like, god damn. Scary, scary stuff. But very close matchup between these two. Kind of go either way. I think it's slightly favored to the Shaman, believe it or not. But it really depends on the gear. If a shaman doesn't have the gear, the rogue's just going to clap their cheeks. So yeah, in World PvP, absolutely amazing. In Battlegrounds, it's the Alliance where the rogues are really, really terrifying. I think in World PvP, the best rogues are undead. Like, unironically, the best rogues are undead in World PvP. In duels, the best rogues are like either human or undead. And there's like one more, but I can't remember what the hell it is. Yeah, orc rogues are monsters. If you see an orc female rogue, for whatever reason, that is usually the scariest rogue in the like on the server, like bar none. The reason for this is because, remember what I just said when I said that when rogues die, it's because they get stunned and then bursted on? Well, this motherfucker has kind of decided that going orc, especially female orc, because it looks more like a man than the, like, you know, the actual male orc, which, God, I don't know what the hell that thing looks like when it's crouching and walking around. It looks like a crab, like a malformed green crab trying to stealth around. What am I trying to say here? Right, that orc stun resistance, giving them a 20% chance to resist stuns, gives them a fighting chance against a lot of these classes. So it gives them a fighting chance against Paladin that they didn't otherwise have. Not much of one, but it gives them one. It definitely gives them one against Shamans. They have a very good chance of beating a Shaman if they're an Orc Rogue. If they're an Undead Rogue, it's a much, much closer fight. It's probably even Shaman favored if it's an Undead Rogue. The reason for this is because the Shaman has to, like, you know, put multiple stun after stun into the Rogue and multiple Kamehameha into the Rogue before the Rogue will actually die. And if each of those stuns has a 20% chance to fail, then you're looking at, like, you know, a pretty good win chance off of that for the Rogue alone. However, conversely, there's a bit of, like, a weird trade-off with Rogues, right? So there's, like, human. Dwarf isn't that bad, but you never see them. There's human rogue. There is human rogue, undead rogue, and orc rogue. Undead rogue will give you a better matchup against mages and warlocks. Orc rogue will give you a better matchup against paladins and shamans. And against warriors, like, unironically. But you don't, that's kind of rogue favored anyways, so I don't know about that one. It even gives you a better chance against hunters as an orc, because a lot of the hunters, they'll try to stun you with their pet, and that's how they set up their whole I'm going to get distance off you combo. Same thing with grenade and tidal charm, and of course if you resist that, it's really, really good. So orc is just good across the board. And then, of course, the last one is Alliance, which is human. This is where TBC really comes into play. Human rogue in TBC is top tier and meta. Okay, I know this much about TBC PvP. It's top tier and meta, and the reason why this is human rogues dueling any other race of rogue wins. Like 90% of the time, 80% of the time wins. The reason for this is because the human rogue can use perception to find and get the opener on the opposing rogue almost 80% of the time, resulting in pretty much like an 80% win rate for the rogue, because the rogue that opens wins, basically. So rather than having like this weird little stealth match where it's like, oh, who's going to find who first, they just get to activate perception and just fucking murk your ass. So if you're planning on playing in TBC, human rogue is absolutely amazing. Otherwise, orc rogue is also absolutely amazing. And orc rogue is like second best in my opinion, because it also it gives you a fighting chance against human rogues, unlike any of the other rogues that we've talked about so far, right? Why is that? Well, because you got that stun resist. That stun resist can come through as an orc rogue, and next thing you know, you spin around and stun them back, and you kind of nullified the fact that they opened on you somewhat. Blah 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 blah. Duels. Rogues are actually kind of top tier in duels. They are annihilators of low tier players. They require quite a bit of skill to play as a rogue, or macros, or the one of the two. But against bad players who are not in the right gear, which is like 80% of the player base, you will shit all over them as a decent rogue. It's when you start running into people who have got Title Charm and like Arena Grand Master and Goblin Mortar and even Gnomish Nenomatic can give you problems. And oh my god, is that a fucking dwarf over there? Like you get the idea. But as a general rule, they are another class that is like barely not in the Holy Trinity, and they're not in the Holy Trinity because they have a losing matchup against mages, even though it's close. Like at the highest level, they have a losing matchup against mages, even though it's kind of close. It's like 60-40. And they also have a very hard time killing SL Warlock. Their hardest matchup to win is Reckoning Paladins, but their second hardest matchup to win is SL Warlock. Like unironically, and even then, I think they also struggle to kill druids, if I recall correctly. So yeah, duels are a completely different animal than world PvP, because people can prepare for each other, right? And if people are preparing for you properly and they're the right class, you're gonna have a rough time of it. But you murk the crap out of most things, and against bad players, if you're a good rogue, yeah, you'll have like winning matchups against you. You'll think you're a god, and you wonder why. Oh, I wonder why this thing doesn't win dueling tournaments. It's because 80% of the player base sucks. Specs. I think there's multiple specs of rogue, but I think everyone just plays like one spec of rogue, if I recall correctly. I really don't know much about rogues and their specs, to be perfectly honest with you. As a paladin, I know they have different openers, and they have different thises and that's. Some are opening my armor, some are causing me to bleed, some are doing this, some are doing that, and I'm like, well, I'm going to stun you, I'm going to wreck bomb you, and you're going to die. And that's just all there is to it. And it's like, oh, you're running away, that's cute. Well, when you get back, I'm going to stun you and wreck bomb you, and you're going to die. So enjoy. Yeah. So that's all I got to say about rogues. Shamans. Alright, Jesus, for almost 2 hours in this fudging video. Shamans are amazing in Battlegrounds. And just about all Battlegrounds are like a turret of death. They bring Purge to the party, so they get to purge the crap out of everything, which is awesome, and it makes them incredibly offensive. They're basically the opposite of Paladins in Battlegrounds, like the complete opposite, the polar opposite of Paladins in Battlegrounds. In Battlegrounds, Paladins bring heals and cleanses to the party, okay? Chad healing, and that cannot really be stopped, and cleansing the world. Shamans, by contrast, bring purges and ranged burst. All right, so the literal opposite of cleansing and healing. Now that doesn't mean paladins can't DPS rather than cleansing and healing, and it doesn't mean shamans can't heal rather than purging and bursting. Yeah, shamans basically define the playstyle of the Horde being so aggressive and front-loaded. The reason why it's front-loaded just means like all your damage is within like a very short window of time, and then afterwards you're kind of sitting on your hands and doing like limp dick DPS. That's front-loaded. Whereas the Alliance is more sustained. That's specifically because of Shamans and Paladins. So, Shamans, mathematically, alright? Shamans mathematically can take their mana bar. Are you listening to this? And they do this in TBC as well. They can take their fucking mana bar, turn it into DPS, and throw it in the enemy's face faster than any other class in the entire game. Right? So a mage can only take their mana bar, turn it into DPS, and put it into an enemy so fast. Same thing with warlocks, same thing with druids, even same thing with paladins, right? Shamans are like the world champion speedrunners of depleting their mana in exchange for damage. Now that comes with a downside. The downside with this for shamans is their mana to DPS ratios are not very efficient compared to the other classes. But again, they can take that mana bar and they can Kamehameha it into your face as damage at record speeds. The only spell that shamans have that is even remotely DPS efficient is Lightning Bolt, and even that is not DPS efficient. It's one of the reasons why you don't see any DPS classes in raids of Shaman, is because they run out of mana too goddamn quickly. They're not designed to be mana efficient, they're designed to be time efficient, if that makes any sense. So, in BGs, right, they will obliterate entire, like, res groups of Horde and then have to sit on their ass for like 30 seconds while they're waiting for their fucking mana bar to refill. The one thing that throttles shamans in PvP is having mana issues. They're kind of like Shadow Priests that way, but even worse. Shadow Priests are they have mana issues, but Shadow Priests are more mana efficient than shamans, even though they are still not mana efficient not to have problems with mana, if that makes any sense. So yeah, shamans, the life of a shaman is burst. Literally, shamans can only do about 4 bursts before they go and have to drink. 4 fucking bursts, and then you have to drink. What the hell is a burst? Well, that's like, 2 lightning bolts, a chain lightning, and an earth shock. Total cast time, let me think, 7 seconds. Great, so they can sustain 21 seconds worth of casting before they need to drink for like 30 to 40 seconds. They are a very interesting animal that way. So in BGs, they're absolute monsters because they're ranged burst, DPS, purging. They're great. Basically, if they have mana, they're awesome, and when they don't have mana, they suck. Like that just is what it is. In World PvP, they're actually a lot of fun and just really good, but they're not like blow your dick off amazeballs. The scariest shamans in World PvP I have ever fucking seen. What they do is they show up, they burst on your bitch ass. They'll use Goblin Mortar, grenade, maybe they'll use a Tidal Charm, but honestly just use PvP Trinket instead. Maybe Gnomish Netomatic, blah, 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 blah. They'll show up, they'll put a couple bursts into you, see if they can kill you, and if they don't kill you, they just run away. Shamans, if they have 50% mana bar, can pretty much run away from everything in the game, and I do believe that includes rogues. But I could be wrong. You might have to use a potion to get away from a rogue, which is kind of interesting. So yeah, they show up, they try to kill you, and if their burst didn't go their way, they just kind of run away. Think of them like a mage that doesn't have sheep, so instead they just run. And then they basically come back like 3 to 5 minutes later. They have 2 specs for bursting. One has 31 talent points into the elemental tree, and the other one has 21 points in the healing tree, the resto tree. I forget what their last talent is, like not elemental devastation, it's like elemental mastery or something. And then the other shaman has nature swiftness. The nature swiftness shaman is the scarier of the 2 PvP shamans, in my personal opinion, just because they're far more flexible, especially in world PvP, because you're going to survive a rogue's opener no problem. And then you have to make the decision as the shaman, based upon how much damage you took from the rogue, whether you use your nature swiftness offensively or defensively. This is a choice that the elemental shaman, the 31 points of elemental shaman, cannot make. His Kamehameha ability is offense only, whereas the nature swiftness one is offense or defense. I think, like I said before, maybe I haven't said it yet, I don't know. Nature swiftness with a macro does not have a GCD associated with it. So you can literally just, lightning bolt, chain lightning, earth shock, all in one global. Literally, it's just instant. Like, blah! You finish the lightning bolt, and then the chain lightning and the earth shock just fly out of you instantaneously. Absolutely terrifying. Pair that with some stuns, and you can kill almost anything in the game. A lot of classes, however, require multiple bursts. So stuns and No Nomadic are your best friend as a shaman, because you're gonna often need multiple bursts to put people down. But like I said, you can basically burst with a shaman every 6 seconds. So whatever. Really, really disgusting. 6-7 seconds. Battlegrounds, World PvP. Yeah, so there's well-rounded World PvP if you know what you're doing. Be the Nature Swiftness build, 100%. Duels, they're mid-tier in duels. There's a lot of stuff that beats them at the high level, but a lot of people are bad, so you'll just end up having like really good, fun matchups with just about everybody, and you'll feel like everybody can beat you, you can beat everybody. As you get better, you'll be like, oh, I have winning matchups against these classes, and I don't have winning matchups against those classes. It's just fun and dynamic, straight up middle of the pack dueler. When I say middle of the pack dueler, what I mean by this is she has like 40% win ratios against some classes, and she has like 70% win ratios against other classes. But against most classes, she's like 60-40 one way or the other. 60-40 this way, 60-40 that way. Versus the Holy Trinity, she has a 40% win rate, or about 30 to 40% win rate against mages at the highest level. She has about a 30% win rate, I think, against SL Warlocks. It's actually there, unironically. But she gets her absolute dick beat off. Shaman, that is, gets her dick beaten down by paladins. Paladins will, again, these two are literally the mirror opposites of each other, paladin and shaman. So paladins are the sustained kings of World of Warcraft PvP. You cannot them, they will not fucking die. And then shamans are the complete opposite of that, where it's like hyper lethal but can very, very quickly. So they just lose mana wars against paladins and eventually get hacked to pieces. And that's what life looks like for them against the Holy Trinity. Gearing shamans is a little difficult. They're another one of those classes where every tier set I think they get is like a resto tier set. It's a healing tier set. So they really need rank gear. Or again, with the AQ stuff, they need to patch some of the spellcasting AQ gear set stuff that nobody wants in order to PvP properly. Just rank to 13, you're good to go. Even 14 is advisable because spell blades and whatnot. Flame Tongue weapon has a pretty serious spell power ratio behind it, so don't be afraid to thunk people with your weapon as an elemental shaman. It'll do a surprising amount of damage. You'll be like, hitting people with your Lockamere for like 200 fire damage, and they're like, "What the fuck?" Yeah, it's a little scary there, to be sure. In TBC and beyond, enhancement shaman suddenly start becoming a thing. In classic World of Warcraft, enhancement shaman is it's kind of F tier in PvP, like unironically F tier in PvP. A lot of fun to try to make work, but F tier in PvP to be sure. Maybe Enhancement Shaman is much better with rank 14 gear, and they just never really get rank 14 gear. It might be a case that Enhancement Shaman is better than we think. She's just gear throttled. But we've seen a lot of testing with Enhancement Shaman on PvP servers like Henhouse over the years, and the Enhancement Shaman just is not there. It desperately needs dual wielding, which it doesn't get until TBC. I actually play Paladin and Enhancement Shaman in TBC. Both of them are absolute monsters in TBC, and yeah, both of them are monsters in TBC. I think Shaman still has mana issues in TBC though, but she kind of doesn't change, but she's just awesome. What else is there to say? Gearing, yeah, specs, gearing. Yeah, okay, so there's only really 2 specs for Shaman in Classic World of Warcraft. There's a 31, and then there's the 21. But we already talked about that. Man, I just want this damn video over with. Holy crap. Someone's like, oh, can you make this? And I'm like, oh, 2 hours later. Fucking hell. I want to go to bed. It's almost 6 a.m. What the hell am I doing here? Warlock. There's only 2 specs for Warlock in PvP. Okay, I take that back. That's not true. This depends on if you're Alliance or Horde. Okay? Because Alliance have so many cleanses at their disposal in PvP on Battlegrounds, Affliction Warlock is not viable in PvP Battlegrounds. If you're fighting the Alliance, there's just way too much cleanse all over the place. And even if you're throwing out, I don't even know if you have Unstable Affliction in Classic. I think you do in Classic WoW. Yeah, yes. I honestly have no idea if you even have Unstable Affliction. But even if you have Unstable Affliction, which I don't think you do, I think that's a TBC ability, the Paladins are just going to cleanse it off anyways and not give a shit. They're just going to be like, oh, it's a silence, that's cute, and literally not care. But I don't think you have it. So you can't really dot up the world as a Horde player. But as an Alliance player, you can kind of dot up the world. But the problem with being an Alliance Warlock, of course, is Tremor Totem. So fearing things, it's very easy for you to dot up the Horde, but it's very hard for you to fear the Horde. Whereas it's much easier for you to, and also all the undead running around the Horde side. So you can dot up the Horde, but you can't fear the Horde very well. And if you're a Warlock going up against the Alliance and the BGs, you can fear them very easily, but Lord knows you can't dot them to save your life. So your dots are worthless, but your fears are really, really good. So if you're playing Alliance, you can play Affliction Warlock. You can't really play Destro Warlock very well on the Alliance side. The reason for this is just because there's too much ranged offense on the Horde side, especially in forms of purges. What ends up happening to you is you're like, I'm going to turret here and glass cannon, some spells into the enemy, and the next thing you know, you're just catching chain lightning jumps left, right, and center. You're suffering a bunch of spell pushback. You can't counter it with a Voidwalker sacrifice because Purge is a thing. You basically just get out DPS'd by the Horde at range, and you kind of just die horribly. So I don't see a lot of Destro Warlocks playing on the Alliance side. Typically they're Affliction Warlocks or SL Warlocks, but even the SL Warlocks have a hard time because of all the purges on the Horde side. So yeah, just a lot of Affliction Warlocks on the Alliance side in the grand scheme of things. But those are your 3 options. But just kind of know how it works on each side. And of course, it depends on what battleground you're in. If you're in, honestly, just play Affliction. Like what am I even talking about here? But of course, on the Horde side, Destro Warlock tends to be king. SO Warlock you can play on the Horde side, but it just does not do enough damage in Battlegrounds. SO Warlock, SO Warlock is like a dueling / world PvP spec, and that's about it. SO Warlock is the Warlock that is part of the Holy Trinity. There is no other Warlock spec that is part of the Holy Trinity. If you do not have Soul Link, that's what SS stands for. I guess I've been calling a Soul Link Warlock this entire time.
Magic Bell.
Yeah, if you don't have that, then you just die in duels, like straight up. You just get you get your cheeks clapped. Which is why these specs become more viable in Battlegrounds, because you have people frontlining for you, right? You got warriors, you got paladins, you got rogues. You have things in between you and the enemy, so suddenly the Affliction Warlock and the Destro Warlock can come out to play. But it is faction dependent, 100%. Destro Warlocks on the Horde side usually run around with a succubus, because the succubus, if you heard me talk about the paladin, does terrible things to paladin healing, so much so that I have to yell at everyone to kill the damn succubus. But that is kind of the solution to the problem, is that if the Alliance players start focusing your Succubi, the Succubi have 2,000 hit points and no armor. So they're like literally a free rage battery to any warrior who knows what the hell they're doing. 90% of warriors don't know what the hell they're doing, so don't worry about it. But yeah, it's literally just Succubi and like Fire Destro Warlocks running around on the Horde side. And then the Alliance side is literally just a bunch of Affliction Warlocks running around. Alright, so that's BGs. Not very complicated. World PvP, be SO Warlock or be dead. And the reason why that is because rogues are going to know if you're an SO Warlock or not. And if you're not an SO Warlock, they will go out of their way to kill you with a passion, if that makes any sense. Because they can't beat you in duels as an SO Warlock, so if they find you in the open world as not an SO Warlock, they're going to basically take their revenge. You couldn't pay me to not go out into the open world on a PvP server as a Warlock, as anything except an SO Warlock. Could not pay me to do it. Absolutely refuse. And that goes for a lot of other classes. Like, if you get jumped on by a warrior and you're not an SO Warlock, you're fucking annihilated. And the warriors will be coming out of the fucking walls in classic World of Warcraft, like out of the bushes and out of the water and out of the fucking trees and out of the sky and shit. There's like, whoa! You'll just be running around, minding your own business, looking left, looking right. Next thing you know, you're stunned. There's a fucking orc warrior on you and you're about to die. Why? Because you're not a goddamn SO Warlock. Also use a Void Walker when you're in the open world. What the hell are we even doing here? Okay, so that's open. Well, but all that said, SO Warlock open world PvP. There's only one class in the game that can kill you, and that is a Paladin. And if you play Alliance, Alliance don't have Paladins. So yeah. Unless, of course, they got numbers on you. But Warlocks are even really good numbers as well. Pally Warlock, especially if it's a Pally SO Warlock, is probably the most powerful duo in the entire game. And in TBC, Warlocks are an incredibly dominating, incredibly powerful class in TBC. But yeah, Pally Warlock is absolutely insane. In World PvP, you can easily 4v2, 5v2 is often an even fight between those two jackasses. It's because the Paladin never dies, and the SO Warlock never dies, and if the Paladin's not dead, the SO Warlock's not dying, and shit's getting feared, and shit's getting seduced, and shit's getting dotted up, and God damn it, is that a fucking Holy Reckoning Paladin? Oh, fuck. Yeah, it's just a really bad time. Bopping. Yeah, just, gross. Yeah, duels. We talked about how they're the Holy Trinity, but specifically it's SO Warlock. Gearing for Warlocks is unbelievably easy. All their tier sets are DPS sets. I don't know if they need to go for tier 3 or not. I haven't looked. I remember I've had rank 13. I haven't looked at their rank 13 set bonuses, if they really want to go for it. But odds are, it's got a ton of hit points and like the first 2-piece. Really, I just see them running around their tier sets and just absolutely murking the crap out of people. For the record, the SO Warlock build, that is the scariest SO Warlock build, in my opinion, centers around their trinket use. SO Warlocks that are top tier that I've dueled always have the exact same trinkets to my knowledge. But this is a Paladin perspective, right? And those trinkets are 2 burst trinkets on cooldown. So they'll have like a Zandalari Hero's Charm, giving them like, 200 spell power on like a 3-minute cooldown. And they'll have like another one, I forget what it is, from like Molten Core, where it's like a spell power for 30 seconds on like a 1.5 minute cooldown. The reason for this is because while SO Warlocks do decent damage, but they don't do enough damage without those PvP trinkets, and they're so tanky already that really all they need is just more damage to synergize with their insane tankiness than like stuns or any kind of crazy PvP trinkets like that. Worst case scenario, recombobulator rays on them are absolutely amazing. You know, plus 1,000 HP, plus 500 mana. I mean, like, it's already hard enough to kill. Just make it even harder to kill and see what the fuck happens. Gearing, specs, duels. I think we covered everything with SO Warlock, to be perfectly honest with you. The BGs and whatnot and the different builds. It's probably the best class in the entire game. Like, unironically, the best class in the entire game. Warlock. It can just do just about everything any other class can do. For PvP. And again, their only natural predators. The only natural predator of Warlock is faction specific. So if you're an Alliance Warlock, your natural predator is Paladin, and you're never going to fight them outside of duels. So you basically just beat everything and laugh at everything and enjoy life. And if you ever have a Paladin supporting you, it is like God tier S+++++++. Meanwhile, on the Horde side, well, that's not... no, that's kind of true. Meanwhile, on the Horde side, you don't have to deal with any Will of the Forsaken bullshit, but you have to deal with Paladins who might come around knowing what the hell they're doing. Now, that's a big if, though. Like I said, 80% of Paladins suck ass. So you'll be a Horde Warlock, and you'll be beating 80% of Paladins, wondering what the hell Palatime's talking about. And then one day, you'll actually run into a top-tier Paladin and get absolutely murdered over the course of like a 1 to 2 minute fight. And it'll basically be night and day for you. Alright, lastly is Warrior. I've actually leveled multiple level 60 Warriors in my time. In BGs, they are God tier, like straight up God tier. They have an easier time of it on the Alliance side than the Horde side, just because there's more cleanses and freedoms and all that good stuff going around on the Alliance side. On the Horde side, they've got, like, you know, Wind Fury, and they got like the Orc racials, and they got all Tauren racials and all that goodness going on. So they're monsters either way. They just need more coordination on the Horde side than they do on the Alliance side. The reason for this is because they are incredibly easily CC'd if they're not catching dispels. And the only thing dispelling them on a Horde team are their 2 priests, whereas on the Alliance team, they've got dispels and freedoms basically for days. Warriors are noticeably more powerful on the Alliance side than they are on the Horde side. But when the Horde has got their shit together and knows where to put their dispels, everything basically pans out about even in the grand scheme of things. Are there any BGs where they suffer? They can have a rough time of it in the Alterac Valley BG. The Alterac Valley BG is incredibly unfriendly to melee classes. It just is what it is. But they can get in and out relatively easily. It's just much better. Once again, it's much better for the Alliance. Well, that's not exactly true. So it's really weird, right? So it's like the Alliance Warriors have freedom to work with in Alterac Valley, so they can get in and out, right? They can jump into the enemy, put like a Mortal Strike and a Whirlwind, and then just run for their fucking lives. And all they need to do is catch a freedom and get cleanse spammed, and they're basically good. But the Horde can just as easily, like, you know, purge spam them and try to put slows on them and all that stuff. And on top of that, there's like a bunch of fucking Tesla. There's a bunch of fucking Tesla turrets. You know, Red Alert 2 fucking Tesla coils fucking zapping them in the back. So a lot of times your Alliance Warrior will be just about to get home, and then, like, you know, 4 chain lightnings will hit him in the back and he'll die. Unironically, though, that's kind of worth it, because that's a lot of mana being expended from the Alliance side. So don't be discouraged. Just res back up and charge back in, and res back up and charge back in. It's actually kind of funny. What else is there to say? Yeah, they're absolutely amazing in Warsong Gulch. They need gear, though. That's the other problem, the gearing. They probably have their funnest time in Arathi Basin, like unironically in Arathi Basin. But it's weird. Okay, so Alliance warriors have a better time of it in Arathi Basin than they do in Warsun Gulch, because they're far more likely to be followed around by a paladin or a priest, and they're far more likely to encounter low number fights. And Pally Warrior is top tier in Pally Warrior and Pally Priest are god mode in low number fights. Meanwhile, on the Horde side in Arathi Basin, you may or may not have priest support just because there's so few of them, right? And you can get CC'd pretty hardcore sometimes in a lot of those situations. Horde players tend to compensate for this in Arathi Basin by just chugging free action potions like it's going out of style. Why is this? Well, because the priests are going to be either too busy to purge them or not notice, or there won't be a priest around and purge available to get free action potion off of them. So they just, chug free action potions in that battleground like crazy, whereas the Alliance warriors can actually rely on having the cleanses and stuff there. In Arathi, in Warsun Gulch, it's a bit more coordinated, right? The Horde priests know what the hell they're supposed to be doing. If they don't know what the hell they're supposed to be doing, they will be yelled at incessantly to do their fucking job, which is to purge the goddamn warriors. You see your warrior not moving? Okay, cool. Well, the next two globals out of you better be some fucking purges. My bad. Cleanses, dispels. Just is what it is. World PvP, warriors suck ass in World PvP. If they have a battle buddy, and specifically if they have a paladin or a priest as a battle buddy, then they do not suck ass as a World PvPer. If they are willing to use free action potions and other gadgets and gizmos like nifty stopwatches and oh god, and their diamond flask with a healing set, Jesus Christ, we need to talk about that, then they are not dog shit in World PvP. If warriors ever grew a fucking brain and learned how to use the wildlife around them to kill fucking mages, then they would not suck that bad in World PvP. Hey, bro, you see that fucking teddy bear next to you? Why don't you put a fucking rend on it so it wants to chew your ass off for like the next 30 seconds? Huh? Yeah, watch that mage try to fucking sheep you now. Especially when you free action potion. Because the counter to free action potion is to sheep. Right? But if they can't sheep you because you just put a rend on the goddamn wildlife, and the wildlife's going to keep you from getting sheep, you're going to watch that mage, double ice block, and then even when they come out of that, this free action potion is still going, you're going to hack them to fucking pieces. There's also other things you can do. You could pull like a Swifties and go Skull of Impending Doom to help cancel sheeps. What else is there to say? I don't think there's anything else going on there. Goblin Mortar, Tidal Charm. Your Diamond Flask suit is absolutely disgusting in World PvP. Or just PvP in general, but definitely World PvP. Holy fuck. And once again, the Diamond Flask suit can be purged. So once again, there's like this Alliance Horde dynamic where, weak against Horde, but you got Paladins on your side. So that's how that goes. But if you're Horde, it's strong against the Alliance because they probably don't have Purge. Okay, so Horde get a special trinket called the Diamond Flask from like a quest chain in like their level 50s. It's a unique trinket for the for warriors. I say Horde for warriors. That gives them like a bunch of strength for like 60 seconds or some shit like that on like a 5-minute cooldown. Diamond Flask, look it up. What it doesn't